Evening has arrived. I've just been shopping, so again, that food theme continues. But evening tide is a time to be reflective. It's that sort of melancholy, slightly wistful, but reflective time of day, evening, the transition. And what I want to pose here as an unlikely, unimagined, as far as I know, never mentioned possibility as a solution for our Middle East problem. And that is captured in the question, is it time for the Turks to assume their old role? Hence the idea of Back to the Future. And this builds on the theme in my earlier discussion of what it means when men who fight reach a point when they can fight no longer, where the will to do it dies. Now, we're a long way from that. The ruin of Israeli cities, the destruction of numerous places, including some historic religious buildings in Iran, the American undisclosed, unrevealed, unverified death toll, besides all of the expense, treasure and blood. Now, as long as the will goes on, as long as the various leaders believe that one more sacrifice will deliver victory, the sacrifice will go on. It isn't just the Israeli government, it isn't just Netanyahu. There's the ordinary rank and file Israeli believes in the destiny of Israel. It's collated and sometimes interwoven with the Jewish destiny, not the same thing, mind you, but nevertheless it's there. And there is an amazing resilience. Now, what I'm talking about is when that notion comes to some kind of end, when world Jewry and the population, the civilian population, ordinary people of Israel, come to the conclusion that however important the Holy Land is to the Jews as a spiritual terrain, does the state of Israel provide what it was supposed to provide? That is a safe refuge. If it's not a safe refuge, then that particular mechanism no longer will carry the same weight, however important Judea and Samaria and what have you are to Jews. And that will be, again, a measure of how many funerals, how many dead sons and daughters, how many wailing mothers, how many fathers who can't get up in the morning because their lives are ruined. Now, at that point, all bets are off, and the maps can come out, and we can think again. Now, the road to this mess began certainly with the Second World War and the Holocaust, what have you, but began before and after with the presence of, as it turned out, first the Turks and then the European powers. The Turks governed this Middle East that we're talking about. The Ottoman Empire extended in all directions, and whether you liked it or not, they administered all of the lands in question outside Iran itself, outside Persia. Iraq, Lebanon, Palestine, and down to North Africa, but that's not our problem now. Although one wonders about the Sudan, really, whether Turkish rule, administration would save it. Now, this poses an interesting question for the Turks themselves, is that after the present regime passes, given its strains and stresses, would the Turks consider going back to the Ottomans in whatever form? The caliphate, whatever. There's all kinds of possibilities. But the transition status, what I'm thinking about now, the way of another version of Back to the Future, would be if at some point the Israeli strategy for the Jewish people is judged bankrupt, not worth the cost, not delivering what was promised. The promised land undelivered. If Jews come to that conclusion, would everybody finally admit that it's time that the British reassume their mandate over Jordan, and Israel. None of this has worked in the sense that one would like it to, even for the locals. And the same thing with tormented Lebanon and Syria. And there the suggestion would be, given what the maps were and what the past were, that the French assume a mandate under the UN, and we need UN involvement in this, and we need UN involvement without any veto by any great power. The Security Council, as part of the deal, would not exercise vetoes. That would be out. This has to work. So a UN sanctioned, return to the mandates, with the British being in charge, as I think of, as they were before, of what is now Palestine, Israel, Jordan, and Iraq, and then the French doing their bit in Syria and Israel. Now, we can see all kinds of problems. But again, the notion is here, it's not today, it wouldn't happen today, and it won't happen tomorrow. But if enough blood is spilt, then everybody, and I mean, the Lebanese are taking a terrible beating. Syria has been in ongoing difficulties of severe sort. Iraq has never been the same since Saddam Hussein. Jordan is an islet of stability, but I think, really, the Jordanians are probably the ones who may be the key. But the point would be for the Turks to prepare, get their act and house in order, and as the British say and the French have, say, a decade mandate to get everybody sorted. And have, the outsiders, the Saudis, what have you, help finance this expensive enterprise. But it'd be a lot cheaper than a war. And then prepare for the Turks to reassume a gentle hegemony over the whole area by assuming what effectively are state functions, state representative functions, with regions with some considerable autonomy, but not enough to get in each other's way. Now, this also relates to something else which is suddenly reared its ugly head, which is the Kurds. And then you think about the Armenians, too. This obviously worked better under the Ottomans than it worked under the Turkish Republic. And there's a thought there for, historians can come into there, we'd have a conference of historians, really, in Istanbul and say, now, tell us, does the past hold any lessons here for us? And if so, what are they? And can we make something of them? But a willingness to return, I mean, Sykes-Picot has a bad name, but Mike Sykes-Picot, the treaties that began this carving up of Turkish territory, was a lot better than more and more and more bodies. And this is, as I say, the real test of this is not whether you didn't entertain what I'm talking about in the abstract or now. I'm saying bring in the coffin with your son in it, and we'll sit and talk about the future then. And maybe there'll be a little bit less oomph and more reason. It may take that. It took it in Northern Ireland. And we got somewhere. And I think Middle East, as a tormented region, as tormented and disorganizing as Southeast Asia or Western Europe or East in the Balkans. I mean, really, Europe is just, all these peoples and languages and religions compacted together in this small territory. And under it's, impossible to make it work. But we must try. And outsiders, with no particular axe to grind, I think there'd be reluctance in Paris and London because of the expense and the responsibility and exposure of British and French soldiers to warring and all kinds of nonsense. But again, the measure would be a death rattle. At some point, the Iraqis and the Syrians and the Lebanese and the Israelis and the Palestinians must say, please, help us, save us from ourselves.